Here is the part nobody wants to hear. The behavioral shifts, speaking less, leading with your position, delegating without revisiting. Those can happen within weeks. You can start them today. But the part that actually matters, the part where the organization updates its story about you, where your peers stop expecting the old pattern and start experiencing the new one, that takes months. And the gap between those two timelines is where most leaders quit. In Module 1, you learn that behavioral change and perception change operate on different timelines. Cherie named the frustrating middle period where the leader has genuinely changed, but the organization has not updated its narrative. That principle applies to every gap type. For the authority gap, here are the specific numbers. And these numbers matter because without them, you will measure the wrong thing at the wrong time and conclude the work is not producing results. Behavioral milestones, 4 to 8 weeks. In the first 2 weeks, the meeting contribution audit data shows your baseline patterns, the patterns you did not know you had. By weeks 3 and 4, conscious application of the exercises produces measurable shifts in the data. By weeks 6 to 8, the new patterns begin to feel less like effort and more like practice. Perception change, 6 to 9 months. The lag exists because the organization carries a narrative about who you are as a leader. Your peers, direct reports, and senior stakeholders have a mental model of your pattern. He is the one who always has the answer. She is the one who speaks on every topic. Even after you stop doing those things, the narrative persists. People see what they expect to see. The narrative has to be overwritten with enough contrary evidence that the old model can no longer hold. Here is what the data looks like, week over week. Week 1, your baseline, spoke on 80% of topics, asked to tell ratio 20 to 80, directed 90% of discussions. Week 2, exercises begin, spoke on 60%, asked to tell 35 to 65, directed 70%. Week 3, 50%, 45 to 55, facilitated half. Week 4, 40%, 50-50, facilitated 60%. The pattern is not linear and will have setbacks. A high-stress week may revert to baseline. That is expected. One regression week does not erase 3 weeks of progress. Track the trend, not the individual data point. There is a specific moment in the authority gap timeline that signals the deeper shift. It is the moment when restraint stops feeling like withholding and starts feeling like leadership. When you hold back not because you are following a protocol, but because you genuinely believe the room needs your silence more than your answer. That moment does not happen on a schedule, but it typically occurs somewhere between week 6 and week 12. You will recognize it because the discomfort changes character. It stops feeling like loss and starts feeling like choice. It stops feeling like you are giving up the thing that makes you valuable and starts feeling like you are doing the thing your role actually requires. There is one organizational signal that tells you the perception shift has begun. When team members start bringing recommendations instead of problems, they did not announce this change. They simply started doing it. They bring recommendations because they have learned that you will ask, what options are you considering? And they want to have an answer ready. That behavioral change in them is the evidence of the perception change in you. The organization is beginning to update its narrative about this leader. They are treating you as someone who expects thinking, not someone who replaces it. Behavioral data from the meeting contribution audit is the leading indicator. Measure it weekly during the first 8 weeks. This is the data that tells you the exercises are working even when nothing else seems to change. Perception data from the 360-degree reassessment is the lagging indicator. Measure at 6 months. This is the data that confirms the organization has updated its story. Both are necessary. Behavioral change precedes perception change. A leader who measures only perception in the first quarter will see minimal movement, even when the behavioral data shows significant shifts. That is not failure. That is the timeline working as expected. Measuring only the lagging indicator in the early months produces false negatives. The 6-month mark is when you run the 360 again, not to validate your effort, to see whether the organizational narrative has updated. If it has, the gap is closing. If it has not, the question becomes whether the behavioral change is consistent enough or whether the organizational narrative is resistant to update for systemic reasons. Both are possible. The data tells you which. If the behavioral data shows consistent change and the perception data shows no movement, the issue may be systemic rather than individual. And that is a different conversation, one that Module 6 addresses directly. Here is what this module gave you. Exercise 5. Speak on half the topics, a third fewer words. Create space and scarcity. Exercise 6. Delegate using the 3-step script and hold it. Signals trust and authority. Exercise 7. Track your meeting data across 3 dimensions, makes the invisible visible. Exercise 8. Respond with a question before offering a solution. Breaks the proving reflex at its trigger. And position first communication. Lead with your judgment. Support with your data. Shifts the register from analyst to executive. Four exercises, a tracking system, and a timeline. The work is not complicated. It is uncomfortable. The discomfort is the signal that you are operating in the register the role requires instead of the one that built your career. Stay with the discomfort. The data will confirm the shift before your colleagues do. The meeting contribution audit numbers will move before anyone comments on your leadership differently. Trust the data during the months when perception has not caught up. Here's what I want you to take from this module. You have a tracking system, the meeting contribution audit. You have 4 exercises, speaking less, question first, position first, delegation script, and you have a timeline, 4 to 8 weeks behavioral, 6 to 9 months perception. The behavioral data is your evidence during the months when nobody else notices. Trust it. Stay with the discomfort. The organization will catch up.